Hello, I am Druzy, but you can also call me Hazy. There's a large chance that the things you're about to hear in this video are nothing new, but my goal is to change that. Normally, I don't like to go into theory in these videos when I talk about games for several reasons. I feel like it's something that has to be done with skill, and the speaker really needs to understand the game they're covering. There are so many blanks that people fill in when they cover games with a cult following. I see it with shows too, where figuring out what things mean becomes more important than just simply enjoying a piece.
Take a look at this.
Jesus Christ,
That right there is the mail. Now let's talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail, please, Mac? I'm dying to talk about
For some people, that can help them enjoy the art more, but sometimes it's okay to just let things be weird for weirdness' sake. That's art. What I'm trying to say is, there are a lot of videos about off. I didn't want to make another video where I dissect the lore and forget about how the game presents itself as an art piece. I want to offer something new to the discussion. However, part of what makes it incredible is its relationship with the player. Off has a very strange way of investing you personally as you play it. Call it breaking the fourth wall or whatever you like, but by the end of the story, you feel personally responsible for what happens to these characters in a way that is deeply uncomfortable. If I ignore that, then you do not have a video. Without analyzing the characters and the storyline, I would fail in my goal to help you understand why the fuck this game is so rad. So in this video, I'm going to tell you how much I love this game. I'm going to describe the relaxing eeriness of traveling through each zone. I'm going to talk about the creepy, sketchy art style, and I'm definitely going to talk about the music. Yes, and I'm also going to tell you about how off makes you a monster. Off is an RPG Maker horror game created by alias Conrad Coldwood, Mortis Ghost, and Martin. I don't want to mess that up. It follows the story of you, the player, who is in control of a man aptly named the Batter in his mission to purify the earth. It is stated very early on that you are in control of him and are seen through the eyes of the other characters as his puppeteer, but let's get back to that later. The main goal of Off is to purify as many areas of the game as possible via the Batter's abilities. You obtain collectibles, interact with characters, and solve puzzles, all the while trudging through random encounters with disturbing creatures. Your enemies are the ghosts that possess the world's inhabitants and force them to attack you, called specters. As time goes on, you gather a party of add-ons to help you fight back, which takes the form of 3 rings named Alpha, Omega, and Epsilon. Once an area is purified, it will become completely monochrome, and you are free to move back to the nothingness, a hub world for the maps. If I haven't already, I should establish that the story is broken up into zones, each with their own line of production. The Elson's hard work in each zone produces a good, which the other zones can then use for their production. These goods are plastic, smoke, metal, meat, and sugar. Zone 1 is the most important of all the zones, providing elements for the collective. This will be important later, so keep it in mind. Now that you're caught up and probably really confused, let's get into what actually happens in the game. You start in Zone 0, Yoas, by speaking to the judge, an adorable and toothy cat who talks a lot. My god, he talks a lot. As the overseer of Zone 0 with a general interest in the fact that you are human, he offers you a puzzle and battle tutorial and agrees to guide you on your quest to purifying the world. He recognizes you, the player, and the Batter confirms that you are the one in charge. With his help, you and the Batter move forward to an area in Zone 1 called Pentel. As mentioned earlier, the characters you interact with from here on out are called Elson, according to the game files. These are strange, anxious citizens who appear to be restless and fidgety when you speak to them, stuttering often. They also appear to be identical. The Elson wants you to purge their workspaces of evil so that they may continue working. The first one you meet is wearing a little miner's hat. It's really cute. He explains explains how the workers release the smoke trapped underground so that the 𝙼𝙾 can breathe, and then sends you down into the mines. Here you navigate your first maze, fighting enemies and grinding the old school RPG way. You get to collect some neat stuff for the add-ons and some healing items called flesh, as well as some extra items to use in battle. As you progress, you stumble upon 𝙼𝙾, overseer of Zone 1 and leader of the Queen's militia, who says fuck a lot and wears no shirt. He seems to delight in terrifying the 𝙼𝙾, and his anger is unmatched against their shy demeanor. When you approach an 𝙼𝙾 after the wake of 𝙼𝙾's wrath, the batter asks if he is a specter in need of purging. The 𝙼𝙾 seems confused and horrified and begs you to continue your job, the one you came here to do. You carry on solving puzzles and beating ghosts with your $40 aluminum baseball bat from Target. You also ride a giant swan boat into rivers of meat, which makes this sound. Eventually, you get to meet Zachary, a witty, fourth-wall breaking merchant who wears masks. He's a pleasure to be around and offers you some higher-level items as well as some common ones. His light, airy personality is a direct contrast to the batter's cold persona, but that's okay. Maybe the batter just isn't one for words. You meet 𝙼𝙾 twice more in this zone, once for him to tell us to fuck off, and another time to actually fight us. In a weird turn of events, both the batter and 𝙼𝙾 think that the other is a specter. Keep in mind that specters, ghosts, look like this.
It's just an ordinary crabby. Oh my goodness! Squidward!
I'll let that sit with you. When you win, you are brought to a small red room where a little boy sits playing with some ham. Yes, really, it is ham. This little boy's name is Hugo, as you later find out, and his accessory is a compliment to his association with the element of meat. He comments on the death of 𝙼𝙾 by coughing out the words, "That started badly," and it cuts to black. With 𝙼𝙾 out of the way, you decide to move forward to Bismar. Zone 2 is characterized by its magenta hue and giant buildings. Soon after entering the library, an enormous structure created by Bismarck's overseer, you find out that many of the books are fake, with the exception of some very strange works of fiction. Later you encounter Omega, your second add-on. After the library you enter the shopping center, which isn't very notable except for the fact that it is a maze littered with random products. There's a cute moment where you find the judge fixated on an ad for cat food posted on the wall. The judge also informs you that his brother is somewhere around here and asks you to give him his greetings. Bismarck is one of the largest zones, which houses not only the library and shopping center, but the amusement park. The amusement park has only 2 rides. One is a roller coaster that has been shut down, and the other is its replacement, which is a stationary row of seats that are bolted to the ground. And if you couldn't already tell, it doesn't go anywhere. You get to play a game with an 𝙼𝙾, and when you win, he accuses you of cheating and then becomes a 𝙼𝙾 burnt. This is not the first time you are introduced to corrupted or possessed 𝙼𝙾. I believe that these are the result of possession from the specters, but the wiki seems to imply that OW's harsh world and its stressors cause the 𝙼𝙾 to transform. At any rate, you are to solve a puzzle by posing on the condemned roller coaster with a statue of Zachary. It appears he is the owner of the amusement park, and taking a picture with him as proof that you're in good standing is the only way to get into his office, where you get some cool collectibles. The last area you encounter is the residential area, which becomes accessible when the batter dons a neat tie from an earlier fight with the corrupted 𝙼𝙾. This area has a timed event where you have to purge the phantoms in under 4 minutes, after which you can speak to several 𝙼𝙾 to enter bunkers and collect some neat stuff. Bismarck's final boss is, in a twisted turn of events, the judge's brother. Valerie is a cat who's been seen speaking to the 𝙼𝙾 in a derogatory manner, insulting them and summoning spirits to swarm the place. The 𝙼𝙾 are confused, and when you find Valerie on the library's roof, your disturbing conversation with him reveals that he's swallowed a bird who has been speaking through his body the entire time. That bird is Yaphet, the leader of Zone 2. Tragically, it's revealed that Yaphet has anticipated his own death due to his failings as king. Angry at the 𝙼𝙾's constant paranoia in his paradise, he summons the spirits to haunt them, further corrupting the land. The entirety of his lore can be found in the library as told through short allegories. If you return to the roof, the judge can be heard mewling mournfully in grief, and speaking to him earns us some somber dialogue. Although we won the battle, the judge's brother was killed in the process. Killing Yaphet purifies the zone and desaturates it, allowing us to move to the nothingness again. Before you continue, we are back at Hugo's room once more. He chokes out, "He left too," before the screen darkens again. Zone 3, Vesper, is a large industrial area with enormous orange buildings from which smoke pours constantly. Entering our first door, you are met with a note and a map at the reception desk, which is a key item for navigating the invisible maze in the cafeteria. Successfully completing your path will grant you a cute interaction with Zachary, who's wearing a mask of the judge. He insists that he is Pablo, the judge's given name, and his laugh is replaced by meow. You also speak to an 𝙼𝙾 who seems certain that being kind to specters does not result in death. He was wrong. There are posters in the area that advocate for this, although it was unclear if the zone's guardian is either misguided or intentionally leading their citizens astray. Zone 3's Elsen are less paranoid than those from Bismar, but it is not to their advantage, and their deformities in this zone are much more drastic during possession. As you progress upwards through Vesper's industrial halls, you get to play a minigame during your fall. If you are successful, you will land in a room with a furnace and a single Elsen pushing corpses into the mouth of flames. He doesn't initiate combat, he only states his business and the importance of sugar. Sugar is made from dead bodies. It keeps the workers from going insane. What's more is that sugar is given to the workers as pay, incentivizing them to be obedient. This explains the threatening posters plastered all over the cafeteria. With so many Elsen who believe that specters are good, the dead bodies are always plentiful. Your confrontation with Enoch, Zone 3's guardian, is a confusing mess of statements from a very large man who misunderstands the batter's agency. He seems convinced that the batter was sent by the queen, and after some back and forth, you fight him as a dwarfed version of yourself in comparison to Enoch's enormous stature. Enoch's battle is not very notable, but it is your dialogue with him that is interesting. While the batter remains his stoic self, Enoch comes off as human. He wonders why the dead just don't disappear, and his combination of arrogance and ignorance is not unlike the batter's quiet ego. Defeating Enoch will grant you passage to OwO's final area. Okay, so I have summarized the entirety of the game's main story. I've left out some things for sure, but I hope you're still following along. This is where things get dicey, and I understand if you check out during some of these parts. Obviously, we're not done here, so let's recap. Thus far, you have completely decimated 3 zones and the 3 guardians of each zone. You have done what you've come here to do, and then some. I would like for a second to ask you a question. What does it mean to purify something or someone? With that in mind, let's move forward. The room is a confusing zone composed of children's drawings and notes that are presumably about Hugo, the little boy in the red room. The art here is much messier than in those of other zones. Following a story told through a series of notes, we find that Hugo was prescribed pills after being told that he is sick, but he states that he does not like them. We are taken to a new map with that same scratchy childlike art, and one at a time we are able to visit the guardians. Only these guardians are different. They are better versions of themselves. The tall mister is Dayton, and he seems to be speaking not to you, but to Hugo. He refers to you as my boy and offers to dry your tears with his coat, encouraging you that tomorrow will be a better day. Dayton asks us to find something for him, something that will tell him what day it is. Simple enough. The other 2 rooms follow the same pattern, both with better versions of the other 2 guardians. Enoch is stuck in a hole in the ground and asks to be helped, and Yaphet asks for the book in your arms, wishing to attain its knowledge. Having helped the 3 guardians, they meet you in a cabin. Enoch offers to keep you company until your mother arrives. He proposes the creation of a world where every man will be allowed to dream of a happier life. Dayton fantasizes about creating a world where every man will have a job, and Yaphet laughs in agreement, explaining, "You do not understand this grown-up talk." Seeing themselves as utopians, the 3 guardians implore you to forget this conversation quickly and to go have fun being a child. Here is how the 3 zones came about. How they quickly became unraveled, though, is only due to their pride and ego. This is a flashback to the guardians' former selves, better versions who were not so prideful. This is before everything. Hugo says, "Hello, Mama. Papa left. I don't like him anyways. I hope he'll be back soon." As Hugo talks about the 3 friends he made, Alpha, Omega, and Epsilon appear on the screen one by one. "Please come back soon," pleads Hugo, and the batter flashes on the screen before we are prompted to save. Chapter 2 of the room is a surreal nightmare with twists and turns. The map turns upside down, the rooms double back on themselves, and the puzzles become as strange as your environment. The game at one point changes hands with a fictional comic called Panic in Ballville, about a boxing-themed superhero wants to rescue his girlfriend from the evil clutches of a sports-themed antagonist creatively named Ballman. You play from the perspective of a boxer, the cheesy hero who wants to stop Ballman from causing chaos, dare I say panic, in the city of Ballville. Boxer tries to fight back Ballman's horde of enemies, but he is overwhelmed. The batter looks up from the pages of the comic and says, "This is really stupid." Hugo says, "Today, Mom picked me up." We are to presume from this note that Hugo was finally picked up from the hospital, where he has been for some time, and he is now in the care of his mother. His mother, the Queen, the second to last boss of the game in Chapter 3. The Queen has been waiting for you this entire time. The dialogue between her and the batter is tense and cryptic. The batter berates her for her inaction and claims that she has failed as a mother. The Queen only remarks that she truly wanted her children to be happy, and the batter seems almost regretful that he must finalize his purification through her. It is here that he seems the most human. They volley back and forth in their dialogue, and the Queen vows that she will not allow you to lay a hand on the son that we have brought into this world. She is a formidable enemy, to be certain. Her moves are chess-themed, and she's armed with her own add-ons which absorb much of your damage, but like the others, she fails. She fades away with the words "my love" on her lips. You go to Hugo's room. Without hesitation, you kill him too. He says that he is scared of the dark. The world becomes monochrome just like the others. You are stopped just before a very large switch. The judge is behind you. Having finally recovered from his brother's death, he has come to stop the batter and you. He's obviously pained not only at your actions, but at his own inability to recognize the signs before it was too late. He asks if the goal of purification should justify the murder of wife and child. He tears down your idea of purification, and you can feel the mix of shame and anger in his dialogue. The choice is turned to you, the player. The judge asks if you're willing to salvage the situation and make something of this horrific wrong. You are offered a final choice. One is the batter's official ending. The other is the judge's ending. If you choose the judge ending, you are shifted to a battle against the batter from the judge's perspective. We can now see the batter from Pablo's point of view. His form is a disgusting duck-like monster with rows of endless teeth and huge, misshapen claws for hands. His eye is a cloudy, glassy orb, and set atop his head is a tiny baseball cap, just in case you forgot who this was. You are well equipped with plenty of special competences to defeat the batter, and when you do, the judge only has one line left for the player. Hence, nothing remains except for our regrets. The credits roll, and the judge is seen trotting gaily through the zones, now colorless. Alright, so you either just got the plot of a wacky cult classic RPG Maker game, or you're so confused now. I mean, you're just so much more confused than you were before. Let me do my best to explain all of that. Keep in mind, I have my own bias, so this is a combination of my interpretation of the events and some influence from context clues. There's a pretty consistent theory which implies that all of the zones, their guardians, the entire game, is the workings of a little boy's mind. He becomes deathly ill and conjures up these characters, depictions of his mother and father, the queen and the batter, struggle over his life, and his father decides to end it all. Hence, the batter turns the switch and his son's life off. Some theories lean on the idea of Hugo and the character's direct relation to real-life people, with the disfigured creatures representing the illness spread throughout his body. Others dig deep into the lore and offer off as a devastated version of Earth, on which only Hugo and his creations are left to roam. There's a really fantastic read on the Funny Fedora site, if you are so inclined, under a user named Space Communist, who goes in depth about every single element of this game. I like how they solidify the idea of Off being a creation for and by a dying child. The game personally condemns your actions, holding you responsible for the death of all the characters. It's played lightly as first, but it becomes clear that your impact on this world is very real. At the heart of the matter, the batter attempts to solve the corruption by destroying everything. The world was twisted and disturbed, and the Guardians needed some therapy, sure, but to completely destroy everything ensures that nothing can flourish, not even hope. It is a perfectly horrible way to make the player feel guilty. Grinding in a video game is a natural reflex. It's the only way to achieve success in the later stages without the risk of constantly losing to higher level enemies. And by the end of an RPG game, you should feel as though you've earned it. The ending is supposed to be where you're touted as a hero, and they say, "Here, King, you drop this," and all of that. Instead, you're left with a gut-wrenching feeling of misery and regret.
Are you in charge of this? Turn it off. Shut this off. Shut them all off. Turn your lights in your house off, too.
Admittedly, though, I am much more hopeful of the empty world's fate with the judge than I would be with the batter. At least you kept one good thing alive.
But I'm not done yet. Call right now, and I'll triple the offer.
What's that? Huh. Radio. What's going on with that radio?
Earlier, I asked a question. What does it mean to purify something or someone? If purification puts you in the mind of a religious conquest from days of old, I'd say you're on the right track. The batter has an air of arrogance about him, a belief that he is to be feared and respected. While Off gives you agency all throughout the game, you are forced to automatically identify with this guy, just as you would in any other game. Trouble is, you, like the judge, don't quite understand the extent of the batter's obsession until it's too late. I mean, you're fighting enemies that look like this. You have to be on the good side, right? Unlike you, however, the batter has no true ability to differentiate between evil specter, possessed 𝙼𝙾, and well-meaning guardian who has fallen to ego and insanity. In the end, the player is left with a handful of regrets and possibly some confusion. It is emotions like these that I feel categorizes OFF as both a game and art piece. Not all video games are art in and of themselves. Not all games have something to say, and even fewer of them say it well. So what does OFF have to say? What really makes OFF the cult classic standalone praised by so many? It subverts your expectations, for one. A twist at the end of a story is nothing to holler about, but a constant and unrelenting build-up to that twist, a reminder about how crucial a role the player has in a video game before the fall, that's a big deal. You can see the same pattern in some of the most popular video games to date. The problem is, OFF isn't exactly a choices game. You can't press X to be suspicious of the guy with the bat and stop doing what he wants anytime you like. You just kind of have to go with it until the bitter end. And I think art does that too. It establishes an audience and speaks to that audience. The value comes from the audience's reaction. You can't change the art, it is what it is. You just kind of have to look at it and make of it what you will. I think the lack of choice in OFF is its strongest element. It's the most important element, because without a lack of choice, there is no impact. No emotional damage. When playing OFF, you're constantly wondering more about the story, the characters, and you're asking questions, but you're not asking the right questions. Everybody in OFF seems to think they're doing things exactly as they should. And they are, of course. The 𝙼𝙾 are digging into still warm cows for metal, mining smoke for people to breathe while clearly struggling for breath, and eating sugar made of their co-workers. It's the way things are, and you're disturbing what seems to be the natural order of whatever this is. It's the same thing as walking into an art museum. Here's all of this cool, incredible art made by many different kinds of people, and you walk right in and start poking around, making assumptions. We project our own thoughts and opinions onto the natural beauty of a thing made by a person. It might be weird or out of place to us, but fuck, man, that's that person's thing, and you can't take it away from them. We do it with video games, photos of other people, books, movies, you name it. You don't walk into a McDonald's and start telling the workers how you think making burgers for sweaty people feels at 3 a.m. on a hot summer night, but you'll gladly play a game and tell everyone when you thought it was pretentious and shouldn't exist. I digress. OFF is an experience that questions your judgment, and by nature, the very actions that stem from that judgment. It also tests your compliance, which is super duper cruel. At the beginning of the game, you are told who you are, what your job is, and are taught how to do it. Like any game, especially in that of an RPG style, you expect a certain level of violence. It is expected of you if you want to get ahead. By the time you were warned of the batter's corruption by some cryptic element of the Guardian's dialogue, it was far too late. You and the batter both were entirely convinced of your holy mission. At the end of OFF, you feel as though you have violated something sacred. There's almost a feeling of walking into someone's room and folding their clothes, only for them to come home and start crying because you ruined their space. It's a hideous feeling. You know you've done something wrong, but not exactly what. After all, you only did what you thought was right at the time. Nobody ever wants to feel that way. Let me digress again, because we definitely need more of that. I'm gonna be honest with you. How I feel about video games as a whole comes from a place of fascination, a desire for a good story and engaging characters. I'm constantly hungry for new and interesting art styles too. But while OFF did something new for its time, it is still so weird. OFF is a really weird game for several reasons. It has this strange combination of harsh line work and grainy real-world diagrams from decades ago, and it also has this intriguing mix of horror and cuteness. And your brain sort of bypasses all of that just so you can kill things, just for a hero complex. Even still, you become used to OFF's weirdness very quickly, so much so that when things change, you know something isn't right. For example, I mentioned earlier that when zones are purified, they become stark white. I didn't really talk about what else makes them special though. You can return to the purified zones anytime you like, but they're empty, completely barren. You didn't just kill the Guardian. Oh no, all of the 𝙼𝙾 are gone. No labored breathing, no notes or crates strewn about, nothing. Should curiosity get the best of you, and you return anyway, you are met with beings called secretaries, and they have math-themed attacks. Oh god. The secretaries have a staggering level of health and become increasingly more difficult with each sterilized zone you visit. Judging from the life cycle of OFF, it can be concluded that the secretaries are the deformed specters of dead 𝙼𝙾. The soundtrack here only consists of the shrill shrieks of these deformed children and some sort of distant knocking and crying noises.
On the snow. I mean, it's in the streets. God damn!
There is good stuff to be found here, if you persist, but that's only if you have no soul. All throughout the way, the game turns against you, making your entire crusade more of a massacre. The bright colors and grainy music is replaced in such a jarring way. It feels like a next-door neighbor disappearing suddenly. It really fucks with you. I should clarify. A weird game does not suddenly make it art, and art is not always weird. It just so happens that OFF is weird, and it makes you feel things. So then what makes a game art? Is sexy hiking or getting over it considered art because it makes you feel things? Is Poppy Playtime considered art despite cashing in on tired tropes? Is Assassin's Creed any less of an artistic game than, say, the Norwood Suite? If we use the standard definition of art, the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, then we can confidently say that every game ever made is an art piece. There is, of course, good art and bad art, but as an artist, I'd like to offer up a different definition. Any piece of media made with passion often uses self-expression and often employing emotion to connect to an audience, tell a story, or send a message. Now think about some of your favorite video games. Not all of them fit this structure, do they? But to me, OWO does all of these things. I understand that we can't measure passion definitively, and everybody develops games differently for different reasons. But like, you can tell the difference between a game developed as a clone of another and something that is made to be new or innovative. I won't elaborate on what exactly I think makes a good or bad game for right now, but my point is, I think that OWO made with passion and love qualifies as art. It just so happens to be good art. Video games are made to make you feel good, like you completed a goal, like you did something worth praising. There's serotonin in every competence and adrenaline behind every boss fight. There's a little primal part of you that praises this game's violent structure. Along with chemicals, it's human intuition that drives you to complete a game in the first place. You're taking a calculated risk when you play something new. There's a risk that you might fail, or that you might not enjoy your experience, or that you might not get your Steam refund. OWO is one of the only games I've seen in quite some time to make you feel horrible just for taking that risk and for following the directions you were told to follow. It's tragic. But it makes for a well-rounded, traumatizing experience that is fun for the whole family. The art for this game is fantastic. The scratchy black and white lines framed against crazy colors makes for great contrast. OWO masters a whimsical, eerie feeling in its design. The zones are sickeningly bright, like a fake smile. Underneath it all, you know something is wrong. By the last few acts, you miss the harsh colors, which is usually the opposite in most horror games. The character design also has a charming quality to it. The characters are round and inviting, and a little bit scary, but not too much. What really inspired me to Google how to get a 2003 RPG Maker game on a Mac like 7 years ago was this cat, so I might also add that the world building across 353 maps is really impressive. RPG Maker's platform defaults stick out like a sore thumb, and my hat goes off to anyone who can hide this. You may not particularly care for the style, but it's unique, and I haven't really seen anything like it since. As for the music is mainly ambient and dance with a focus on industrial percussion and also electro jazz. Something I really like about OWO is that the breakbeat songs are mostly saved for tedious areas like mazes and puzzles. It gives your brain room to think while a fun little song bounces around in the background. Windows licking is almost surely a reference to Aphex Twin's 1999 hit single, and it bounces just about the same while you traverse through the shopping mall maze, reading advertisements for the same product packaged in different ways. A lot of pieces from OWO can be compared to some of Richard's most danceable beats, so I'm not sure if this was by coincidence or if Coldwood is just an Aphex fan. A Stab of Happiness is another of my favorites, the theme for the amusement park where you fight the corrupted Elson. Now that I think about it, maybe the batter actually did cheat. Anyway, A Stab of Happiness has this cold, stiff synth melody, and the asynchronous bells in the background make for this bubbly piece that sounds like someone made a song about them wanting to make a song about having fun. I love it. Flesh Maze Tango and Pepper Steak both have examples of addictive looping samples that make it easy to listen forever. I don't know if this man sprinkled crack in his battle music, but there really wasn't a single time I got tired of hearing Pepper Steak. It could be the crushed sounding drums that mimic factory ambience, or the constant changes that keep things interesting, but either way, 10 out of 10. Rainy Day Inn is one of my favorite songs to listen to during the fall and winter months. There's bleakness behind it, but also a chord progression that makes me feel relieved. The siren is uncomfortable, but fits right in alongside the distorted brass. It is definitely good music for thinking, especially the first couple of times with the puzzles. The soundtrack feels like exhaustion, fear, and darkness, and it also feels like you're mind wandering while you do mundane tasks, riding a train, doing your laundry, standing in line at the DMV, picking up an extra shift. The music is not lacking in emotion either. A textured, grimy synth leads the way in Desperately Safe with a mellow piano following closely behind it, and more voices following soon after. It feels hopeful the way the notes join together. In the latter half of the song, you can really feel how the anxiety of the Elson does nothing to save them from the horror, it only prolongs what is inevitable. Speaking of inevitable horror, Not Safe is just I mean, listen to that. All jokes aside, Alias really likes manipulating the motifs of previous songs to create new emotions. There's more of a classical approach to the ambience as sounds are built up in layers to achieve the intended effect. Burned Bodies, for instance, has a main theme that is slightly off-key, and it clashes a little with the other elements of the music. I remember this theme the most out of all of them. It's uncomfortable and hopeless. Yesterday Was Better and Today Is Worst are compact themes with little structure that feel like sitting on a train, both utilizing stifled breathing noises in the background. The Woman of Your Dreams has a very unique feeling compared to the rest of the OST. It consists of alluring and slightly off-key synths built on top of a cold mechanical beat. It plays when you finally meet the queen, and it fits the quiet tension between her and the batter. The game ends with Avatar Beat, when the batter and you are revealed as a monster. It sounds powerful, animalistic. It also has the strongest composition in my opinion, especially as a song for a fight. It sounds similar to Autechre, Neotropic, Mathematics, Akira Yamaoka, and Avith. I would love to know what Coldwood was inspired by when creating Off's soundtrack. Unfortunately, it seems I will not be able to ask him as he left the internet after becoming fed up with YouTube's system, but I will try and remember to leave his links in the description below so you can enjoy his music more directly. Hope you're well, Coldwood. More power to you.
It appears that our time together is almost over. Don't forget to take your supplements. Stay tuned.
Alright, well, I suppose it is time for me to explain why exactly I hold this silly little game about a man with metal baseball bat in such high regard. Not only do I respect Off's creator for how he handled its rise from niche to popular in the real world, but I sympathize with the game and its metaphors for mental health. To me, the 𝙼𝙰 are a really good example of severe anxiety. As someone who suffered from a numerous amount of mental health conditions in the past, I understand the intense desire to feel safe and to want that feeling at any cost. That aside, I especially love the idea of intense stress being a mechanic in a game. It is realistic. Off sort of dips its toes into psychological horror, not only with the fourth wall breaking stuff, but also with the effects you see on the 𝙼𝙰. They stress at the tiniest thing. They're meek, mousy, and comically shy until something bad happens. The 𝙼𝙰 are a great example of extremes. When you're a fragile person, you lose the ability to see what should be taken seriously. You might get walked all over. You might lose control of your temper. You might hurt yourself or somebody else. Worst of all, you might shut yourself away from new experiences. You can't make new friends and find love by being inside or working all day. Well, you can, but the 𝙼𝙰 don't have Discord. Do they date each other? Or in Off, you don't really have a choice but to destroy everything, as that is the batter's agency, but I always liked that the judge is the voice of reason, even at the bitter end. Despite it all, he felt like there was still hope for the world. I think that's really nice. Intentional or not, this game has had quite an impact on me, for sure. I play it because it's still one of my favorite games after all this time, and because it provides me with a lot of nostalgia and an opportunity to reflect on my own game design and my own art as an artist. Most importantly, though, I play it when I want to feel like there's still hope. That is all. That's all I have to say about Off. If you made it this far, thank you. I'm really surprised. I suppose that most people would be rioting by this point. But before we go, I would like to briefly discuss one of Off's fan games, A New Home, created by Aaron Mullins. Home is a story from the perspective of the judge as he follows the batter from zone to zone, fighting specters, talking to the zone guardians, and also collecting a party of cat friends. I haven't had a chance to play it all the way through yet, but I very much enjoyed the game. I think it's interesting to see the judge from another perspective, and to see him and his brother interacting more than in the original game. While Home invents two new characters that drive the plot forward, it doesn't attempt to replicate Off's story or add too many things that don't belong. The writing style is pretty close to the source material, with the judge being his verbose self and the other cats fitting into neat little tropes, but it doesn't feel cheap. I quite enjoy it. Sadly, Aaron Mullins, Felix the Judge, is no longer with us, having lost his life in March of 2017 due to a vehicular accident. I wanted to mention this game because I felt like it was a really good example of the passion that has stemmed from Off and its legacy. I also wanted to highlight Felix's creativity and talent in something as obscure as a fan game of a cult classic from the early 2000s. Off has produced a lot of fan art that was very popular during its time on Tumblr and still is today. 10 Black animated a two-part series and a fake Off fan game, and as far as I understand, both are still in the works. There are ships, illustrations, and at one point there was even an extensive comic written by Lynn Gray and illustrated by Petite Cream that paid homage to the story while including the perspective of the puppeteer. that's you. I could make this video much longer, but honestly it's probably over 40 minutes long now, and I sort of forgot that this is only a side project. So I encourage you to play Off and Home. I own both of them myself, and they don't take up much space either. Both games on GameJolt are compatible with the free RPG player software available for Mac computers, so there's no excuse not to enjoy yourself if you're willing to spare a little time. Thank you again for watching this. This is probably one of the last commentary videos I'd like to do for a while. I get tired of hearing myself talk. And I feel that March should be resigned for focusing on my new game, Invoke. However, I very much enjoyed this process. The writing and video were done with a lot of care and attention, much more than I usually give to my videos, which is saying a lot. I recently got a new computer which allows me to play whatever I want and make more complicated horror animations. This video alone took a solid 2 months to make, all because of school and other life stuff getting in the way, but I'm glad I finally got around to it. I've always wanted to make a video about Off and share it in a way with others that I haven't seen anybody else do. If you would like to watch me play this game, and others, hop on over to Hazy Eyed on Twitch and bear witness to the nonsense that goes on there. You can talk to me or suggest games you think that would be interesting for me to talk about. The next commentary video will probably be another cult classic RPG Maker game, so stay tuned for that one. Or stick around and influence a video that you'd think I'd like to make. Writing is not my strong suit, if you couldn't tell, so I hope it feels improved over the previous videos. I also hope that you got something out of this, if anything, and I hope you will be well. Until next time, goodbye, stranger.